Thank you for the promotional video. We now begin our session 3. The title of this session is Restarting Global Aviation. And the questions for session 3 can be submitted through the QR code on the screen and as well Q&A link on YouTube. See more. Session 3, in this session, I have given the honor of being the moderator of this session. Thank you. And we have 6 speakers in this session to share their knowledge and insights. Firstly, please let me introduce our distinguished speakers. First, we have Deputy Director Hwang Song-pil, International Air Transport Division, MOLIT, Republic of Korea. And also we have Deputy Director General and Singapore's alternate representative, Eun Chi-chu, on the Council of the ICAO, Civil Aviation Authority of Singapore. And Next, we have Asia Pacific Director Vinod Goel, Airports and External Relations, IATA, and Head Technical Affairs, Safety, Capacity, and ATM, S.A. Wong, ACI, Asia Pacific. And next, Executive Director Cho Woo-ho, Airline Marketing Group, IIAC. And last but not least, we have Deputy General Manager Justin Jong-jin-woo, Cargo Sales and Marketing, Korean Air. So now for the beginning of the session 3, please let me introduce Mr. Hwang Song-pil, Deputy Director of International Air Transport Division, MOLIT, Republic of Korea. He will deliver his presentation about RK's efforts on air transport recovery during COVID-19. And ladies and gentlemen, please welcome him.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm the Deputy Director Song-pil Hwang from the Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transport. I'm here to give you a presentation on what kind of efforts the Korean government is making to restore air travel network in the face of COVID-19. As you are aware, the outbreak of COVID-19 has hit the globe beginning from January, and Korea was not an exception. The travel demand plunged, and the air network subsequently collapsed. As a result, Korea's air network, which used to serve 45 countries to 255 destinations with around 5,000 frequencies per week, was downsized by 97%. With the number of countries served reduced to 15 countries and destinations to 30, with weekly frequencies decreased to 121 as of April. In response to this unprecedented crisis, MOLIT has strived to recover the collapsed air network with a focus on seeking balance between 2 conflicting interests. One is the interest of domestic quarantine situation. As Korea requires all incoming travelers to undergo diagnostic tests and 14-day quarantine, we had to carry out the reopening of the air network within the range that can be covered by the current quarantine capacity. On the other hand, from economic and social perspectives, a swift restart of international flight was needed to resume the essential essential exchanges of people and goods, and eventually to reinvigorate the economy struggling from the impact of COVID-19. While trying to seek a balance between these 2 conflicting positions, and even considering support for aviation industry, MOLIT has tried to collect opinions of various stakeholders. Based on these efforts, MOLIT has been rebuilding the air network, focusing on key international routes essential for sustaining the economy within the current quarantine capacity permits. Along with such efforts, the government implemented all-out infection prevention measures, and citizens were quick to follow them. In addition, with enhanced quarantine measures adopted in air transport sector, a set of Korea's countermeasures system against COVID-19 was set in place in April. On the back of these pan-governmental efforts, the air travel volume, which was at its lowest in April, began to rebound. We restarted international flights, primarily with countries of more frequent economic interactions. Now, we operate to 30 countries with efforts going on to increase frequency as well. Meanwhile, the Korean government has been providing support for airlines affected by plunged travel demand with all sorts of fiscal programs and relief on administrative burden. However, the fundamental restoration of international network can be achieved when the global travel demand recovers. Unfortunately, the 14-day mandatory quarantine still in place in many countries remains as a major barrier to recovery of the demand. As part of efforts to restore network for the short term, MOLIT is promoting international non-landing scenic flights, which depart from Incheon Airport and land back in Incheon, to reignite demand for travel and help carriers make profit. In close coordination with quarantine authorities, Korea has set up our own scheme for international flight to nowhere. What is notable in the scheme is that passengers can enjoy the same duty-free benefits as those provided by normal international flights. This will help both airlines and duty-free industry to attract customers. These scenic flights are expected to launch soon. At the same time, Korea is closely monitoring the global move of adopting travel bubble with keen interest. We are also conducting a research on it. MOLIT is working with all relevant government bodies, including quarantine authorities, to reach a consensus on enabling a quarantine-free travel with countries of similar epidemic situation. Further, Korea will consult with foreign countries to continue developing this scheme of air travel bubble to restore international travel. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much for your presentation. And next, our next speaker is Mr. Eun T. Chiu, Deputy Director General and Singapore's alternate representative on the Council of the ICAO, Civil Aviation Authority of Singapore. He will deliver his presentation about Singapore's best practice on aviation research with travel bubble for us. Hello, Mr. Eun T. Chiu.
Hi there.
Welcome.
Very good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody. And I note, in fact, that we do have a guest from Montreal. So a very good early morning to you, Nabil, Mr. President of the ANC, and it's very good to see all of you here. And also to a very good day to all my distinguished speakers with me. My name is Eun T. Chiu, and I am the Deputy Director General of the CAA Singapore. And in fact, I have found it very fruitful to hear all the best practices from everybody, including ROK, IATA, and ICCAIA, and so many others. And I really want to thank you for these valuable insights that you are sharing. And let me now move on to talk about Singapore's experience. And in fact, just to set the context, as already observed by so many before me, the COVID-19 pandemic has truly changed things. It has changed how we live. It has changed our interactions. It has changed travel industry. It has changed tourism. It has changed retail. It has changed basically everything, every aspect of our lives. And I mean, if you think about it, prior to COVID-19, try going through security wearing a face mask. You would not go through. But today, try going through security. So the questions that we gathered here, wondering, how do we restore passenger?
Excuse me, Mr. Eun T. Chiu?
Yes.
Okay, because we have to check our microphone.
Yes.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Okay, and all right. Please go ahead.
Now it's okay? All right.
Yes, okay. Thank you.
So, next slide, please. Well, our approach to restarting air travel is differentiated and risk-based. After COVID-19 entered Singapore, we introduced border control measures and various quarantine measures, contact tracing, various safety-related social distancing measures. And these have pretty much become the new normal today. In the recent months, we have been reopening our borders using a risk management approach. And in particular, we have introduced systematic testing of passengers for COVID-19. And this is now on our list of public health tools to ensure the safety of air travel. And this is part of our overall strategy of a multi-layered lines of defense. So now let me go on to the next slide, which will show you our three approaches. One more slide, please. Yes. So here you can see these are the four pillars of our approach so far. Let me first touch on the reciprocal green lane, the one on the left. This is for essential business and official travelers. And there is a quota, and that is based on flights. And travelers, they have to take both a pre-departure test and also a test on arrival. And travelers are subject to quite a number of requirements, including having to be pre-approved and also quarantine requirements while waiting for the test results. And perhaps most important is that they have to keep to certain controlled itineraries. And this would mean, for example, having to have a private transport of his or her own. And so far, we have established this reciprocal green lane with several countries, including notably with the ROK. I move on to the second pillar, which is called air travel bubbles. Now, actually, this is still being negotiated, but you can consider it as the one step up. That would allow for general travels, including for tourists. And these are also reciprocal arrangements. And what is different is that travelers will be subject to testing, but no need for quarantine requirements. And the third pillar, the one that's shown in blue, will be the unilateral opening, which we have already done with some countries. And these countries have very low incidence of COVID-19. And that would include, for example, Australia, Brunei, mainland China, New Zealand, and Vietnam. And travelers from these countries can they can arrive and they are subject to on-arrival testing. Now we know that not all of these countries are ready for opening, but we hope that when they are ready to reopen, the governments will consider lifting the border restrictions with Singapore. And finally, we talk about the last pillar on the right, which is the transfer and transit passengers. And we are in the process, in fact, we have been doing our very best to facilitate this. There are specific requirements that need to be followed and for each of these lanes. And we have to rigorously ensure that these are done to ensure public and health safeguards. So this brings me to the end. Next slide, please. And I know that I'm running over my time, but I just want to conclude by saying that Singapore is focused on taking a differentiated and risk-based approach to reopening borders. And this allows us to resume air travel with countries or regions at a pace that both parties are comfortable and confident with. And I think this kind of forum where we share best practices, harmonization, and coordination is a very good. And really, I want to thank ROK for this initiative. And looking forward, the runway to aviation recovery and takeoff will not be smooth. And in fact, our next challenge is how to deal with vaccines and vaccination. And that will present its own needs and demands, and we hope that everyone will be ready. So thank you very much, and I hope that we will be able to see each other in person soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. And for our next presentation, we have Mr. Vinod Goel, Asia Pacific Director, Airports and External Relations of IATA. He will deliver his presentation about sustainable recovery of aviation industry against COVID-19. Let's meet him on the screen. Hello.
Hello, everyone. Hi, this is Vinod Goel from IATA. I thank the organizers for having us on this conference. And allow me to just share IATA's views on where we are on recovery and what needs to be done. So if we can move to the next slide. I think if we look across the world, after the steep drop in February, March this year, we have seen some recovery happening in different parts of the world. But unfortunately, the Asia-Pacific region, the international travel in our region is lagging other regions. And traffic today in Asia-Pacific, international air traffic is anywhere between 5 and 10% only of what it used to be. So why is that so? Why is international air travel not picking up? If you go to the next slide, what we see is that a number of countries in this world and in this region have restrictive borders, policies, and in some cases, borders are totally closed. We are tracking all the different travel arrangements and bubbles, and I think the speaker before me from CAS talked about the travel bubbles and the different arrangements that Singapore has put in place. But there aren't many such examples in this part of the world, and you can count them on your hand. So why is that so? If you go to the next slide, when we ask the passengers, why aren't you traveling? One of the chief reasons that they give is the implementation of quarantine. Quarantine for us, and based on our conversations with passengers, is as good as keeping borders closed. The WHO does not recommend quarantine for asymptomatic travelers, and countries that have implemented quarantine have seen a dramatic fall in traffic. So what should be done about it? If you go to the next slide, in line with the WHO's guidance that air travel has been significantly de-risked, border opening essentially requires a trade-off between economic benefits and the risk. And there is nothing zero risk. Nothing in life is zero risk. But what we think needs to be done is establishing the baseline level of risk that is acceptable to a country. And given the layered approach that has been put in place for travel, we need to determine the impact of all the risk mitigation measures and then figure out what is the residual risk. And then once we have the residual risk, we can look at, okay, how do we handle that? And if you go to the next slide, one of our, what we are saying, and more regulators around the world are saying, that testing can be an alternative to quarantine. There are different models of testing. You can either implement testing pre-departure and post-arrival, or just post-arrival testing. And we are seeing different models implemented across the world. We are learning from them. And then what we need is, first of all, a standardization of test results. Even if you have pre-departure testing, you need to have some post-arrival testing to take care of passengers who may have fallen through the cracks. And we also need to look at the registration process, because that can be a bottleneck in the whole travel journey. So if we go to the next slide, what we are advocating for is a globalized, standardized global approach for health credentials. Now, again, there are thousands and thousands of labs across the world where you can get a COVID test. But then each one of them is issuing a certificate in different forms. Some are electronic, some are paper, some have different kinds of data points in there. What we also need to ensure is the certificates that are being issued, they're authentic and they can be verified. So technology can help in all that. Digital credentials are normal for travel these days in many parts of the world. And what we are advocating for is a framework based on common standards and an agreed set of data elements. We are looking forward to many different providers, many different institutions getting into this space, implementing the solutions. IATA has one solution, which is called the IATA Travel Pass, but there are many more such options. Our whole approach is we want many players to get into this space, but it should be based on a common set of standards which are open. So very quickly, if you go to the next slide, and which is sort of a summary slide, there is an urgent need to reopen borders. Yes, there is a lot of talk on vaccines, and yes, it is promising, but it'll take anywhere between 12 to 24 months to get it all across the world. Air travel itself is quite safe. We have seen very few reports of transmission on board or throughout the journey. Quarantine is a costly solution and can impact lives, families, businesses. And systematic testing can replace quarantine to make sure that international travel is still safe. So practical steps can be taken by states to reopen the borders safely using a multi-layer approach by evaluating the risk, comparing the risk, using rapid tests, and then adopting a standardized approach towards health certificates and verification. So that in brief was what we think needs to be done to reopen our industry and to get air travel and economies back on their feet again. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your presentation. And next, we have Mr. S.L. Wang, the Head Technical Affairs of Safety Capacity and ATM ACI Asia Pacific. He will deliver his presentation about initiative for aviation industry with airport health accreditation programs. Hello, Mr. S.L. Wang.
Good afternoon and good morning, everybody. My name is S.L. Wang. I'm the Head of Technical Affairs and Safety at the Airports Council International Office in Hong Kong. Thanks for inviting ACI to this conference. Today, I'm going to talk about the latest program launched by ACI a few months ago on the accreditation of health measures being taken at airports. Can I have the next slide, please? So this program was launched about 5 months ago in the midst of the pandemic in the month of July. And we are very grateful that we got support from ICAO. And it's largely based on the ICAO CART guidance, CART being the acronym for ICAO Aviation Recovery Task Force. Next, please. Okay, so the main objective of the program is to promote best practices in health measures to be taken at airports, developed by ICAO and the industry. And very importantly, it's to restore confidence for the public, and in particular passengers, staff working at the airport, and also governments, that it's safe to travel through the airport. And finally, to ensure a better harmonization of measures taken at airports based on the 2 guidance materials that I just mentioned. Next. So the CART takeoff guidance document has got a number of modules, one of which is the module for airport operators. So inside that module, we have got a number of chapters covering different areas of the airport terminal, including the terminal building, check-in area, security screening, airside, and similarly for passengers arriving at the airport. So from the moment you get off from the plane, you go through customs, baggage reclaim, until exit to the landside area. And not to be forgotten is, of course, the areas for employees working at the airport. Next. So as I mentioned, the program is based on the ICAO CART document and also a number of ACI documents you can see on the screen. Next. And these are public documents that you can download from the ACI website. So how does this accreditation process work? So first of all, is a voluntary program. So the airport in question has to raise the request. So, and after that, ACI will send a self-assessment questionnaire to the airport, and the airport has to complete the questionnaire and send it back to ACI for assessment. And after, of course, together with supporting documents. And after that, ACI will arrange an online interview to validate the evidence provided by the airport. And I have to say that recently ACI has upgraded its service by providing on-site audit, because in the beginning we were not able to offer an on-site audit service, obviously because of the pandemic. We couldn't travel, but now we have hired an international auditor to help us to do the on-site audit. And after successful and satisfactory verification of the evidence provided by the airport, we will provide a certificate for for a period of 1 year. And of course, after that, we will do continuous monitoring for improvement. Okay, next. So far, we've, as of the end of last month, we've accredited more than 100 airports worldwide, including 28 in the region of Asia Pacific. And I'm pleased to say that Incheon and Gimpo airports are two of the first airports to be accredited by ACI for this program. Okay, next, please. Okay, so for any inquiry, you can write to ACI at the email addresses indicated on the screen. So I'll now be happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you very much for your presentation. And next, we have Mr. Cho Woo-ho, the Executive Director of Airline Marketing Group, IIAC. IIAC's airport bubble with K-current model is this session's and this discussion's title. And could you please come to the stage? And ladies and gentlemen, please welcome him.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Cho Woo-ho, and I'm directing the hub strategy of Incheon Airport. Today, as a member of airport operator, I would like to address travel bubble with Incheon Airport quarantine model. Okay, a table of contents. I will skip the first part. We already know the situation very well. Okay, yeah. Anyway, due to the hit of the virus, Incheon Airport also has a very harsh time. Passenger demand is falling by more than 95%. And next is COVID-19 quarantine model of Incheon Airport. Yeah. As an airport is run by diverse entities, building a cooperative structure is key to effective emergency response. When the coronavirus was at its onset, we built our own control tower and kept close communication with MOLIT and quarantine authorities. Also, we identified the following 5 key factors for effective disease response. First, securing resources like personal protective equipment and cleaning tools. Second, providing protection tools for airport staff, such as disease prevention education and sharing real-time situation. Third, building manuals for each emergency phase. Fourth, deep cleaning public spaces like the terminal. Fifth, providing information on safety measures to passengers. Around those 5 factors, we made quarantine criteria and checklists, and based on them, implemented preventive measures like a post-step check, a fever check before departure. In case of inbound passengers, we separated their pathway early on in the pandemic. Based on these measures, Incheon Airport has been under successful operation without shutdowns since the beginning of COVID-19. This is the areas of focus and subject test with quarantine at Incheon Airport. For disaster control standard and checklist, we identified 200. Okay, let's skip this one. Okay, yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Based on the successful K-quarantine model, we have run a quarantine consulting project for Bali Airport, Indonesia. What's next? The limited spread of COVID-19 is the first priority, and also creation of atmosphere to start air travel. We have to make a step-by-step procedure where we have to go, how to go. I think is the travel bubble. Okay, it's a little bit mixed. We surveyed regarding the bubble this September, worries on getting the disease when traveling, and 14 days quarantine after travel is a great factor limiting travel demand. When asked about the willingness to travel when a bubble was built, the willing to travel jumps more than threefold when the assurance for safety is given through the travel bubble. We can see here that the recovery of aviation and travel, the raising of confidence and safety is a priority. It's a little bit mixed. Okay. Okay. I would like to talk about the travel bubble concept. The travel bubble is about restarting air travel and promote tourism based on agreement between nations that have sound epidemic control. As of 2019, 78% of inbound passengers to Korea have visited for leisure, and this demand has now evaporated due to the coronavirus. As the WTO is also saying that 80% of worldwide travel is gone, it is very urgent to build a foundation for the start of air travel. If through the bubble, a sense of confidence for air travel, lighter travel limits, and shorter of quarantine periods could be led on, it seems that it would facilitate the restart of air travel. And this is the types of travel bubble. Travel bubble can be divided into full-scale and partial. A full-scale bubble is about bringing back business as usual. A partial bubble is about limited opening, such as a shorter quarantine period, and allowing some traveling for commercial passengers and defined regions. How travel bubble should go forward? When looking at the pandemic spread and recovery situation now, there is a difference among nations in terms of degree and speed. That's why full-scale bubbles among nations would be hard. Paced progression focused on specific routes with safety records would be necessary. Okay, this is the phase one or step one of a travel bubble we suggest. We need to preemptively select regions that have a high level of safety and containment possibility. That place will be the island geographically, or could be vacation spots where the contact with local citizens is limited. Quarantine facilities and process should be managed efficiently by local hotels, shops, tourist attractions. And there should be exist potential travel demand. And the prerequisite for opening such route would be a certified safe travel product. First, there should be an inspection procedure and pilot operation under government supervision. Airlines, tourist agencies should have contingency measures for suspected patients during travel. And also insurance and refund policies should be ready. There will be some obligation for the travelers as well. For example, self-isolation, self-diagnosis, and movement limits after travel. When through these efforts stability is assured, it could be extended to the general public. Finally, based on bilateral agreement, we could minimize quarantine time after travel or even lift it. This is the phase 2 or step 2 of travel bubble. Set target regions through market analysis based on number of confirmed cases, disease control competitiveness, potential travel demand, and economic impact. Then an intergovernmental agreement is needed. Based on this analysis, we identified Vietnam, Taiwan, or Thailand as attractive targets in East Asia. This is the case about Hong Kong and Singapore travel bubble. Until the effectiveness of vaccinations are proven, PCR tests, control of passenger pathway, and management of travel record seems inevitable. This is the policy recommendations for the travel bubble. Due to the coronavirus, the aviation and tourism industry is facing an unprecedented crisis. Nevertheless, the opening of the aviation market will be difficult in the near future. We need the government level support so that this industry can survive. Through a paced opening of the aviation market through the bubbles, we need to build a pan-governmental control tower, including airports, airlines, and travel agents, and push forward the development of travel packages that can guarantee high-quality quarantine and safety. Yeah, this is the end of my presentation. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much for your presentation. And next, we have our last speaker, Mr. Justin Jongjin Woo, Deputy General Manager of Cargo Sales and Marketing, Korean Air. He will deliver his presentation about impact of pandemic crisis and Korean Air's strategy to overcome the crisis. Please welcome him.
All right, thank you very much. On behalf of Korean Air, I would like to thank all the delegates, and especially on the Ministry of Land Infrastructure and Transportation for giving us a chance to speak out on what was happening in 2020 and what we're heading as an airliner. Based on the complete portfolio covering all aspects of airline business, you can see passenger, cargo, aerospace, and in-flight services. Consisting about 70% passenger division has been flown with 27 million passengers served with our customer-oriented services. And 23%, you can see the cargo business sector that has covered 1.5 million tons of air cargo transportation. And a fun fact is that it is the first trans-Pacific flight out of Korea that has flown in 1971. And it's not a passenger. Not many people recognize that it was a Boeing 707 freighter that was flown over to Los Angeles. In case of aerospace, we have accumulated our latest technology for late 40 years in engineering, manufacturing, and maintenance of aircrafts. And last but not least, 1% consists of catering and in-flight duty-free shopping, which is directly connected to our passenger service. Mr. Goel has actually shown this slide before, but as you can see, the sharp edge of drop in the global travel demand has dropped by 94%. In case of Korea, it was not an exception. In case of Korean Air's international passengers, we have decreased our daily flights down to 92%, and also the demand of daily passenger has dropped down to 96%. And of course, based on our past experience with the rapid response system for infectious diseases, such as SARS, H1N1 virus, and Middle East respiratory syndrome. However, COVID-19 is nothing compared to such. When you flip to the other side of the coin, you can see the opportunity in every business. In case of Korean Air, we found this in Economics 101 with the supply and demand curve in air cargo industry. In their global capacity that has dropped down to 78% in the belly capacity of the passengers, we can see the overall cargo capacity that has shrunk down to minus 31%. On the other hand, we see the significant growth in the international commodities that has not been emerged in the market before, such as personal protective equipment that has shown up to 88% of increase compared to last year. Lockdown has caused the growth of laptops and e-commerce. And later on, we have witnessed the increase in the COVID test kits, flu vaccines, sanitizers, injection syringes, and so forth. The disruptive market in the supply chain has led to surge in the air cargo rate. And also you can see the droppage in the jet fuel price by 70% compared to last year. Then how did Korean Air get to overcome this crisis? With the surge of demand in the air cargo industry, we have decided to make the conversion from passenger to cargo-only passengers, which can be called as freighter. By utilizing existing fleet capacity, we have utilized ourselves in the belly space and the overhead bins. And later on in the picture, you can see on the bottom left page, utilizing cargo seat backs, which has been implemented in 777s. Starting from September, we have implemented ourselves by taking out the seats and putting down cabin floor loading as another option. By doing this freighter operations with cargo capacity has been expanded our supply, which is equivalent to 1,420 747 jumbo freighters. You can see the details on the left. Starting from 35 flights flown in March, you can see November figures that has reached up to 650. And within this month, we are expecting this number to go up to 700. As a result, maintaining 50% of the corporate revenue and seeing the operating profit throughout first to third quarter of 2020 is not an easy answer. As you can see in the impact of COVID-19 in Korean Air, on the left side of the slide, you can see the shrinking of passenger division by 88%, while cargo alleviated itself to 77% in an increase. So there's a drop in passenger business, while there's a boosting in cargo business that tried to alleviate the situation. So what are the next steps? Everybody has been watching us, and there has been many news about this. Weathering the storm with progressive actions and preemptive strategy has been put in as our motto for 2020. So what is ahead after the storm? I'd like to emphasize on Korean Air's core competencies that has been built over half a century. So we are preparing ourselves for the post-pandemic era while we're still continuing our fight against COVID-19. In case of passengers, we are putting safety first in air travel as a campaign, and we are expecting to have recuperation of passenger demand throughout this travel bubble. Meanwhile, cargo side has been asking for new demand based on K-quarantine, including the test kits. Now we're moving over to the vaccines. By expanding our supply network and leading our cargo market, we are expecting to have this sustainability in hand. With preemptive responses to the future changes in the aviation industry, I'd like to conclude with the final stage. As we keep moving forward and opening the new doors and doing new things, just like what Walter Disney has said, we're leading down ourselves to the new path. This concludes my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your presentation. And now we have discussion and Q&A time for session 3. Questions can be submitted at all times through indicated the Q&A link on the YouTube, see more. And also many people sent us their questions, and I have a few questions for this time. The first question goes to Mr. Hwang Song-pil, and actually from Shin Jong-hyun and Korea Herald and Yonhap News Agency, they sent us the same question about travel bubbles, so I would like to introduce our first question. Please explain the current status of Korea's travel bubble and the criteria for selecting a target country in the future. So please answer for us.
Okay, thank you for the question. As I have mentioned in my presentation, the major barrier to the recovery of travel demand is the 14-day quarantine, which is adopted in many countries, including Korea. So in order to make an exception and allow free quarantine travel, we need to talk to all the ministries in the government. So we are talking right now with the quarantine authority. But the recent spike of the confirmed cases in Korea makes it quite difficult to develop the discussion for sure. And about the second question, which was about the selection of the countries, I think many criteria can be considered, including the number of confirmed cases of the country and the size of the land, and sometimes the potential demand for the travel between Korea and that country. So we are now conducting research on it to make a more reasonable criterion to find out what country is better, what country we can prioritize. So I think we can get the result in the end of December. So I have to see. Thank you.
Thank you for your answer. And we have next question. It goes to Mr. Vinod Goel from Rina Lee. I think that IATA's One ID policy coincides with the contactless policy, especially in the COVID-19 era. So please explain how to implement this in detail.
That's a very good observation. Yes, the IATA One ID initiative is based on the implementation of biometrics. And I know both Incheon Airport and KAC and also MOLIT have been looking into the implementation of One ID concepts in Korea, and so have a number of other countries, including where I live, Singapore, which has been a leader on this front. So what this, in a strange way, coronavirus has put a lot more focus on contactless processes, and biometrics and One ID can help in that. And the IATA Travel Pass takes the One ID concept and adds on the verification of the test certificate and the health aspect to One ID. So you can almost call it like One ID plus. And so we are looking at this as an opportunity to, with the rollout of digital health certificates, to also roll out One ID over the long term globally. So very good question, and a more detailed explanation can be done separately. Thank you for that.
Thank you for your answer. And we have a next question. And next question is for Mr. Eun Tae-chiu. If implemented Singapore's aviation recovery policies, where are some difficulties it would face? Please let us know more about this.
Can you hear me? Yes, thanks. Do you have 1 hour or 2 hours? But yeah, there are many challenges, obviously, because this is not an easy issue. I think I might just start by saying that the first thing is about balancing because we are really talking about lives versus livelihood, right? So on the one hand, everybody would like, from the industry, we would very much like to see the traffic pick up and going back to the pre-COVID levels. But on the other hand, there is also about the difficulties and the safety concerns of the people. So this balancing act, in fact, I think it was also mentioned by Mr. Huang earlier, it really is a national effort. We are really talking about the ministers, our politicians meeting and talking and working through each of these procedures, and our civil servants and all the agencies, not just the Civil Aviation Authority of Singapore, but also the Ministry of Health, the Tourism Board, and all our economic agencies, and of course the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, all working together to just try to find what is the best way forward. And I mentioned in my presentation that we're talking about a balanced approach. We're also talking about a risk management approach. And so that really is the one that we are talking about. So that is one of the challenges, to find the right balance and the right timing to do it. You know? And I think the other challenge, of course, is in fact specific to aviation, is that while even as traffic has dropped tremendously, there is still a need actually for our people to keep current, for air traffic controllers to be able to be used to handling the kind of pre-COVID levels, for the pilots to still get practice and keep current, and for various things, the safety aspects to continue to be there. And so these are some of the things that in the back end you will see us doing. So for example, I will talk about the air traffic controllers. We have to put air traffic controllers on simulator training with that kind of traffic volume before COVID-19, so that when traffic resumes, and we are hopeful that traffic will resume, in fact, we are confident that traffic will resume to pre-COVID level, then our people are ready. And I believe, and on the parallel side, there are the same considerations for airlines and pilots and so on as well. So these are just two aspects of it. I mean, in fact, I can keep on talking about it, but I will not, because there's certainly so many things. Yeah, but I'm happy to take any questions offline. If anything, just feel free to email me, and I'm very happy to share our experience and our views. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your answer. This question was from Kathy Lee. Thank you for your question. And next question goes to Mr. Justin Chongjin Wu. Are there some changes that have been for this year that have been positive and which should be kept for the future, even if vaccines successfully leader the COVID-19 crisis? Airlines have responded to the crisis by offering space for cargo. They have also reduced the seating. So are these phenomena short-term?
Thank you very much for the question. On behalf of Korean Air, I would like to speak up for our challenges in terms of the vaccination of the world. And in case of regulatory compliance, Korean Air as an airliner is willing to participate and collaborate with the authorities and come up with a solution that is workable for everyone. On the side of the cargo business, vaccine itself can be seen as an opportunity, as an upcoming demand with a lot of collaboration that is needed on the global level as well. I hope this answers your question.
Thank you for your answer. This question was from Asia Times. Thank you for your question. And next question is from Korea Times and to Mr. Vinod Goel. Is it inevitable that we will see fewer airlines meeting the demand of travelers in the future? Please let us know more about this.
Sorry, was the question whether we'll see fewer airlines?
Okay, I would like to introduce our question again. It is inevitable that we will see fewer airlines meeting the demand of travelers in future?
So, it's a good question, but what we estimate is that air travel will make a full recovery back to 2019 levels by 2024. And aviation and airlines, it's a very competitive industry. So, while in the short term, you will see some consolidation as, airlines look at different models. But we expect there to be robust competition and different business models in the long run. So the future of aviation is bright, and we need to work together to make sure that we can speed up the recovery.
Thank you very much for your answer. And next question is, are there any untagged airport operation method to counteract COVID-19 from Lee Jun-song? So, which speaker would you like to answer this question? Please.
Is that a question about the possibility of contracting the virus at airports?
Sorry, I can hear you.
Is that a question about the possibility of contracting the virus at airports?
Yes, maybe. Are there any untagged airport operation method that counteract COVID-19? Was a question.
Well, there's no zero risk in this world, but practically we could minimize the chance of contracting the virus at an airport by sticking to all the industry best practices and the guidance material provided by ICAO. That's what we believe in.
Thank you, Mr. Asawang. Thank you so much. Because of the time limit, it's time to wrap up the session. So I would like to thank all of you once again for this seminar.